Welcome. Over the next few weeks, all of you have been tasked with sharing stories about where God has met people in the Bible in untamed places. Let the chaos and campfire confessions begin as we meet God in the great outdoors. This is Into the Wild.
Well, if you've been around PCC this summer, you've probably heard that for a few weeks now. If today is your first time with us, though, then you probably got the gist, right? We're going on a journey through the wilderness this summer. Now, the wilderness is a place that's untamed, unpredictable, and unknown. And man, it sounds epic when you talk about it like that. But like our senior pastor, Brian Hughes, said a few weeks ago, there are two kinds of people when it comes to the outdoors. Those who were built to live in it, and those who were not. And I definitely was not built for it. In fact, in that video we just watched, where I'm like waving my arms, looking aggravated, pretty good representation of how I feel about the outdoors as a general rule of thumb. Now, we've heard some epic stories about the wilderness over the last few weeks, from fond memories of childhood wilderness adventures to amazing stories of survival at the mercy of it. And I wish I could tell you I had a story like those. But I'm not kidding when I tell you that what I came up with is the best one I got, the only one I have. So just take a second and temper your expectations. Okay, here we go. Ready? So when I was in high school, my girlfriend at the time and her family invited me to join them for a beach vacation. Now, this wasn't like a beach house, beachside hotel kind of deal. Instead, we drove a camper and parked it in one of those beachside campgrounds, like where the beach is like a 10 to 15 minute walk away. Some of y'all are like, yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm good. Anyway, okay, so I say we, but it's more accurate to say they, honestly, because my girlfriend and her family stayed in the camper, but they didn't feel great about me staying in the camper with them at the time. Yeah, look, they told me before we ever went on the trip, this was part of the deal, and I agreed to it, I understood it. We hadn't been dating for that long at the time, and they really didn't know me super well. And honestly, with the benefit of hindsight and working with teenagers now myself, they were pretty justified in their skepticism. So everybody was hanging out in the camper. Meanwhile, here's where I stayed. Yeah. Now, this isn't the exact one, but about 4 steps from the bottom of the camper stairs, there I was, alone in this thing. And again, I couldn't really have a gripe here because I agreed to it. And honestly, it could have been worse. It was pretty spacious and comfortable, and I had it all to myself. So for the first night, the first night, I was getting all my stuff together. I put all my shower stuff to the side so I wouldn't have to fumble around for it in the dark to find it. I got my cot all set up, and I'm ready to go to sleep, right? So I'm zipping the tent closed just before I turn off my lantern, and the zipper breaks. Yeah. It left a 4-inch opening, and I was like, okay, well, I mentioned, I was a teenage boy at the time, so I did what any average teenage boy would do. I was like, it's fine, whatever. It's a small gap, nothing's going to get in here, no problem. So turned the lantern off, went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up. My back was a little itchy for some reason, but I figured it was no big deal. And the warm water felt amazing. Figured that was normal too. So we ate breakfast. We walked down to the beach. I took my shirt off to go into the water, and everyone behind me just started shouting out of nowhere. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, what is the deal? It turned out that something had gotten into the tent, about 1,000 mosquitoes. And they had their way with my exposed back. It was absolutely covered in mosquito bites. Needless to say, I was invited to sleep in the camper for the rest of the trip, with an endless supply of calamine lotion thrown in to sweeten the deal. Now, within a week or two, my back was normal again, thankfully. The impact of that wilderness experience, it was temporary, right? But that's not always the case, is it? When we're in the wilderness, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual, what happens while we're there can have a lasting impact on who we are. And that's certainly true of the wilderness lesson from the Bible that we're going to explore today. If you've spent any time in the Bible, the lesson and the person that it's about will probably be familiar to you. Because, like Pastor Elijah told us earlier in this series, behind God and Jesus, there's no one mentioned in the Bible more than King David. Just to connect the dots, if you don't know, if you're confused, King David is the same David from the David and Goliath story. And if you don't know that story or you just need a reminder, here's a super quick summary. So 1,000 years before Jesus came to earth, the Israelites, God's people, were locked in a prolonged war with a people called the Philistines, who had a renowned warrior on their side named Goliath. The Bible says he was almost 10 feet tall and wore armor that weighed about 125 pounds. And rather than having the two armies fight each other, day after day, Goliath asked for an Israelite to fight him in single combat. But understandably, no one did, and the sides remained at a standstill. So one day, David, who's a shepherd boy, he's about 17 years old at the time, he delivers food to his brothers who are serving in the army. When he sees Goliath and hears him insulting God, David steps in to challenge him. But rather than wearing armor and swinging a sword, David uses a few stones. And with a single strike to the forehead, David defeats and kills Goliath and claims victory for Israel. It's an amazing story. But it's actually not our wilderness story for today. It is the event that sparks the narrative that we're going to explore. And it has real implications for you and me. So I hope you'll stick with me, but before we get there, we need just a little more background. When David kills Goliath, he starts to become famous among the Israelites. He's adored by many, but catches the watchful eye of one. You see, what's happening at the center of this story is a struggle over the kingship of Israel. At the people's request, God chose a man named Saul to be king. But through his own actions and failings, Saul loses God's anointing. So God anoints someone else, someone unlikely. You probably guessed it by now, a 17-year-old shepherd boy named David. And when David kills Goliath, that event has a huge ripple effect on the dynamic between the current king and the king in waiting. Because as David's reputation grows, Saul's position becomes more precarious. Saul sees that God is with David and becomes more and more hostile toward him until finally David is forced to run. When David heard that Saul and his men were searching for him, he went even farther into the wilderness to the great rock, and he remained there in the wilderness of Maon. But Saul kept after him in the wilderness. There's a healthy measure of sadness wrapped up in these words, because David and Saul were not strangers. David had served in Saul's palace, married into his family, fought and won battles on Saul's behalf. But now, they're two anointed kings fighting on opposite sides for the same throne. The wilderness took a little bit of a different shape for David and Saul. For David, it was very much a tangible, physical wilderness that he was forced to retreat into because of Saul's pursuit. For Saul, though, the wilderness was more mental and emotional. But the more I studied this David and Saul narrative, the more I realized this. They were both in the wilderness for the same reason. Because what they had or what they had been promised was under threat. The prospect of losing something valuable, something they felt belonged to them, something that God had orchestrated, that led both David and Saul into the wilderness. You know what that feels like, right? When it feels like you could lose something you've been given, something you've worked hard for, and something that's immensely valuable. It feels like my wife Abby and I fill a lot of roles, both here at our church and in our lives. But a couple of roles we've really been enjoying lately are being Aunt Abby and Uncle Ellis. This is our 4-year-old nephew, Leland. I know, right? This kid is so cute. We love getting to spend time with him. Like, I really think I'm his favorite, but let's just keep that between you and me, okay? Like, don't tell anybody. Leland loves grabbing his mom's phone and FaceTiming us all hours of the day. Does not matter what time or what we're doing. His favorite game is what we'll call Monsters, Inc. So, like, I go and hide. He waits nervously, and he goes, "Oh, no, Uncle Ellis." And then I jump out and roar and scare him silly. And it's amazing for me. We'll see. So a couple months ago, he stayed overnight with us, completely wore us out. But it was a total blast. It was totally worth it. Something Leland really doesn't enjoy, though, is saying goodbye. In his mind, everyone he loves, including us, would never, ever want or need to leave him. So we should all just occupy each other's presence forever. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. So we do have to say goodbye from time to time. And he's learning, he's coming along. But for a while there, it was terrible. Like, we would basically have to wait until he was distracted and then just make a run for the door. And, like, we could hear him screaming our names as we scrambled into the car and we drove away. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, Abby would basically be in tears thinking about Leland missing us. Now, maybe they didn't have, like, a complete meltdown, but I couldn't really blame David and Saul for experiencing similar feelings. They really valued what they were under threat of losing: their callings, their kingship, and, at least in David's case, his life. I mean, it's no wonder that both of them ended up in the wilderness. But ultimately, the threat didn't determine how each man's story played out, and neither did the wilderness. Because the key to what was on the other side of the wilderness was how they handled the wilderness itself. And the same is true for you and me. It's not the wilderness itself, but how we handle it that defines us. It's not the wilderness itself, but how we handle it that defines us. So that's what we're going to talk about for the rest of our time today. What we can learn from David and Saul about how to handle our time in the wilderness and come out stronger on the other side. There are 3 keys to how David navigated the wilderness well and where Saul succumbed to it. The first one is confidence. So let's talk about Saul here first. Honestly, it's a little tricky because it's genuinely hard to tell when Saul is confident and when he's not. For example, when God anoints Saul as king through the prophet Samuel, this is how it happens. Let's read it together. So Samuel brought all the tribes of Israel before the Lord, and finally Saul was chosen from among them. But when they looked for him, he had disappeared. So they asked the Lord, "Where is he?" And the Lord replied, "He is hiding among the baggage." So they found him and brought him out, and he stood head and shoulders above anyone else. Keep in mind that Samuel has already anointed Saul to be king in private. This is just the public announcement. Saul has been chosen for this great honor, and he's hiding. Why? I don't know about you, but for me, I have to imagine that it's because in some way, Saul felt unworthy or not ready or scared. Like he knew something about himself that meant he would struggle to fulfill the demands of this role. Eventually, Saul does take on the mantle of king, though, and while his lack of confidence doesn't appear to be a problem anymore, that doesn't mean that things are going how they're supposed to. At one point, God orders Saul to completely destroy an adversary of Israel called the Amalekites. God very clearly tells Saul, "Wipe them out. Don't leave anyone alive." Well, here's how it actually happens. Then Saul slaughtered the Amalekites from Havilah all the way to Shur, east of Egypt. He captured Agag, the Amalekite king, but completely destroyed everyone else. Saul and his men spared Agag's life and kept the best of the sheep and goats, the cattle, the fat calves, and the lambs, everything, in fact, that appealed to them. They destroyed only what was worthless or of poor quality. And then, this is the exchange Saul has when he's confronted about his actions. When Samuel finally found him, Saul greeted him cheerfully. May the Lord bless you, he said. I have carried out the Lord's command. This is hilarious to me. Like, he really believes that he's done what he was supposed to do. But you know what makes you sure you're right when you're actually not? Confidence. Namely, misplaced confidence. I mean, you can see the issue here, right? At one point, Saul doesn't have any confidence to speak of. At another, he has entirely too much confidence. And the core of the issue is where his confidence is placed: in himself. And that's where things become unbalanced for Saul, because his confidence rises and falls to the level of wherever he is, mentally and emotionally. Saul could have done it differently. When he felt like everything that he had was under threat, when he felt forced into the wilderness, he also felt like he had to do something to secure it. Instead of putting his confidence in himself, he could have put it in the one who placed him where he was in the first place. And that's one of the differences between how he handled the wilderness and how David did. Just before he goes out to fight Goliath, David says these words: I've been taking care of many of my father's sheep and goats, he said. When a lion or a bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from its mouth. If the animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. I have done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do it to this pagan Philistine too, for he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. It would be so easy for David's confidence here to flow from his own abilities, his own skills that he has sharpened. I've killed lions and I've killed bears, so I'll have no problem against Goliath. But he doesn't. Instead, David's confidence is in God. He knows that it's God who's blessed him with the abilities he possesses, and that God will take the victory over Goliath. Over the last year or so, I've had the opportunity to be a part of this program called Uptick. They invest in the next generation of pastors. It's been an incredible experience, and I think some of the lessons I've learned about leadership will be invaluable for me in the future. But even more importantly than that, through the experience, God did some work in me that is going to be foundational for me as I continue to become the follower of Jesus that I'm called to be. And a huge part of that journey for me has to do with confidence. Like Saul, I've had seasons in my life where my confidence in myself was much greater than it should have been. But more recently, I've been a little bit more like the verses we read earlier where he's hiding from the crowd. I've been letting a lack of confidence hold me back out of fear that I'm not good enough, that I don't have enough knowledge or skill or self-awareness to be who God is calling me to be. That pastor's group and some encouragement from a few trusted voices in my life have helped me see where I was missing the mark. That I can't let the fear of my own limits keep me from stepping into what God has for me. But also that when I do step into it, I have to stand on who God wants me to be and what he wants me to do. And that I base my confidence in him rather than myself. I think that's true for all of us, especially when we're navigating whatever wilderness we're in. So first is confidence. The second is expectation. And for Saul, we can just think back to the story we read earlier about the mission that God gave him that he thought he carried out so well. I mean, it just makes me think, if I were in Saul's shoes, I would want to obey God as well as I possibly could. I would want to get every detail right. I would want to dot every I, cross every T. So how would I get to a place where I didn't care at all about doing that? Where I figured that as long as I did what God said mostly, that I'd be fine? I think the answer is this. Saul never expected to lose God's anointing. In fact, in his mind, I don't think there was ever a chance of it happening. And if you can mostly do whatever you want without ever facing any consequences, then why would you care about doing it the way someone else said to, even if it's God? Now, when we compare this with how David handled expectation, the difference really couldn't be more stark. Earlier, I mentioned that David was about 17 when he was anointed king and killed Goliath. Well, spoiler alert, David does go on to become the king, and here's what the Bible tells us about it. David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned 40 years. So he was 17 when he was anointed king, and 30 when he finally became king, meaning that there were 13 years in between. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, being anointed to be king kind of seems time sensitive. Like it would happen imminently, right? Like, yeah, maybe it'll take like a couple weeks at most to figure out all the details, go through all the paperwork, got to sign everything. But if it were me, I'd be peeking out the window, waiting for the limo to come pick me up, to get fitted for the cape. Gucci, of course. And maybe like a Cartier scepter to go with it, like with all the jewels and stuff. Like, it'd be awesome. But that doesn't happen. And then a month goes by, and then 6 months, and then a year, and then 5 years, and then 10 years, and then 13 years. And while all this time is going by, David isn't just sitting and waiting. He's working and fighting for the current king, and then he's running and fighting for his life. But through it all, David stayed patient and focused. There's no place in the Bible where you'll find David saying, God, you said I would be king, but I've done nothing but struggle ever since. When is it going to happen? How do I even know that it's going to happen anymore? David was able to keep moving forward, even in the wilderness. I think it's because he had the right level of expectation, and it came from staying rooted in what God said and what he didn't say. Because God said that David would be the next king, but he never said when or how long it would take. David was able to hold his expectations loosely. He knew where God was taking him, and he was willing to let the journey unfold before him without projecting his own expectations onto it. And you and I can do that too. Because if we're already in the wilderness, then we probably already don't know what to think or expect about the situation we're in. We're searching for what we're supposed to do or where we're supposed to go next. So when God points us in a direction, we have to be able to put our expectations aside and follow where he's leading us. Confidence in God and what he'll do through us. Healthy expectations for where he's leading us. And the last key to navigating the wilderness well, integrity. Now, integrity is one of those words that gets thrown around in a lot of contexts where it really doesn't fit. What integrity actually means is our commitment to our values and the soundness of our character. Those things are tested when we're in the wilderness. And how we handle those tests determines whether we get out with our integrity intact. Now, the last story we're going to look at today shows us how we can maintain our integrity or lose it. Saul chose 3,000 elite troops from all Israel and went to search for David and his men near the rocks of the wild goats. At the place where the road passes some sheepfolds, Saul went into a cave to relieve himself. Yeah, they do that in the Bible. Like, these are real people, so there you go. But as it happened, David and his men were hiding farther back in that very cave. Now's your opportunity, David's men whispered to him. Today the Lord is telling you, I will certainly put your enemy into your power to do with as you wish. Just to make it super clear, David has the opportunity here to kill Saul, to end the ongoing struggle between them, to end the wait for his reign to begin, and to eliminate any opposition to it. When we're in the wilderness and we're doing everything we can just to make it through to the other side, choices like these are so tempting, aren't they? We can choose to lash out, feel justified to act or speak in a way we normally wouldn't because we're under duress, or take our eyes off who we're trying to be just long enough to make a choice that will derail us. Or we can make a different choice. So David crept forward and cut off a piece of the hem of Saul's robe. But then David's conscience began bothering him because he had cut Saul's robe. "The Lord knows I shouldn't have done that to my lord the king," he said to his men. "The Lord forbid that I should do this to my lord the king and attack the Lord's anointed one, for the Lord himself has chosen him." So David restrained his men and did not let them kill Saul. In this moment, David remembers who God's called him to be and who he wants to be. And presented with a choice to maintain his integrity or shatter it, David makes the hard choice. Because let's be real, the easy choice here is to kill Saul, to take out the guy who's been chasing him and remove the only obstacle standing in the way of him becoming king. But even in this wilderness, David chooses to stand firm. David navigates the wilderness well, and Saul navigates it poorly. And how their stories unfold is a direct result of choices that they make. Saul's unreliable source of confidence, unhealthy level of expectation, and the compromise of his integrity lead to his ruin. But David's confidence in the one greater than himself, open-handed level of expectation, and commitment to his integrity lead him out of the wilderness and into all that God promised for him. Don't get me wrong, that wasn't the whole story for David. He would find himself in the wilderness again in the future as a direct result of choices that led him there. But even when he messed up, when he strayed from the path that God was laying before him, David's commitment to these crucial components meant that he could get back onto the path. So what about you? How are you going to navigate the wilderness well? You don't have to let it overwhelm you, force you into desperate choices, and compromise your character. You can put your confidence in the one writing your story. You can hold expectation loosely and be ready for whatever God is going to do. And your integrity can remain strong, even as you walk through the wilderness. At the end of the day, navigating the wilderness well comes down to a question that you have to ask yourself. Who do you want to be? You can choose to be someone whose confidence is based in all the wrong things, whose expectation is out of touch with reality, and whose integrity is on shaky ground. Or you can choose to be a person who turns all of those things over to someone greater, someone who will help shape your confidence, your expectation, and your integrity. And if you're ready to be that person, but feel like you don't know how to get there, he can help you with that too. He'll meet you where you are and help you become who you want to be, the person that he created you to be.
Fighting on the outside, fighting deep within. I'm never really sure where I should stand. Drawn to what I could be, longing to belong, but never really sure of who I am. You meet me where I am. You meet me here. I'm not who I want to be, but I don't know how to change. I need you to rescue me. I just can't stay the same. believe that I can change. I know you can rescue me. I refuse to stay the same. I'm gonna be clean, I'm gonna be free. I'm gonna see the way you see. I'm not who I wanna be, but I believe that I can change. I know you can rescue me. I refuse to stay the same. I'm gonna be clean, I'm gonna be free. I'm gonna see the way you see. Like you, Jesus, that's who I wanna be. Like you, Jesus, that's who I wanna be.
The truth is, God has given each of us the ability to choose who we want to be. And with God's strength and his provision, we can be exactly who he created us to be. Now, we all have walked through our own wilderness season or will. And so the truth we heard today, that the wilderness isn't what defines us, but how we respond to it does, is encouraging for me. And I hope it is for you too. If you have any questions or want prayer or just need encouragement as you journey through the wilderness, then please reach out to me. You can find the link in the chat to get my contact info, and I would love to have a conversation with you. Until then, though, I hope that we will see you next week as we continue our journey into the wild. You can invite a friend, just share the link with them, and we'll see you both next week.